representatives in parliament is exercising a fundamental right that can bring transformative change. And I know, and I've met some of you, and I know that you are powerful women that are working for the advancement of gender equality. And this is something that's really important to emphasize. But not only is your participation in politics a fundamental right, it is also fundamental for sustainable development. There is no way we can talk about achieving SDG 5 without talking about your participation in politics or in decision making. So this really makes it quite important. But apart from that, we see that your involvement and your engagement in this space is an enabler for the other outcomes of gender equality, right, and women's empowerment. So without you in some of these spaces, without your influence in policy making, your influence in decision making, it's quite challenges to have women's voices, women's agencies, some of the critical issues that they have being represented in parliament. So we see you as playing quite a key role actually in elevating other women's issues, but also not just other women's issues, but societal issues with a greater understanding coming from your own lived reality in some of these spaces. So we appreciate that. But still, despite the fact that we know why it's important to have women in these spaces, your voices are missing. Women's voices are missing. And I'm sure these are statistics that you have engaged with before. And my apologies. So at the top there, this is data actually as of this year. I was going to change that. So currently we do have 27 countries with a woman head of state or government. And as you know, for Africa, we used to have 2, Ethiopia and Tanzania. We no longer have Ethiopia. We only have Tanzania that has a woman president or head of state, meaning that we still need to have better progress, more progress in this area of work. And then, of course, when you look at ministerial positions held by women, still under the threshold of 50%, overall national parliamentarians globally are 26%. In our region, is still the same kind of numbers. So you can see overall that we haven't reached the 50-50 threshold that we want to really achieve. And I think right now, as we are reflecting on Beijing plus 30, these are some of the numbers and the critical issues that we are trying to think about to say, how far have we come in 30 years in terms of women's political participation? And if we are not where we need to be, what is the problem? So you see that since 1995, again, the progress is minimal. Of course, the numbers have doubled, but we still need much accelerated progress, so to speak. It's going to take us too many years for us to get to parity. And I don't know whether you will be alive. I'm not sure if I'll be alive 80, 100 years from now, which is the time it will take us to get to where we need to get to. So there's a lot of data around. I think if you look at the Africa Barometer by gender links, you see that there's some progress in some areas, some incremental, percentages that we see in terms of lower houses of parliament, etc. But in some regions, there's some decreases, etc. And I won't bore you with all of the details, but I think this is data that's available for you to look at. So what are some of the barriers that we see in terms of women's political participation? You could write books on this, you could write theses on this, you could actually school me on this because you live some of these lived realities in terms of what are some of the challenges. But then, of course, I think generally these are some issues regarding perception of women's leadership. Can women lead? Are they as good leaders as men? So we find that there's a lot of grappling with that in this day and age, right? To say, can women lead? Do they make good leaders? So that constant grappling with what does women's leadership actually mean and what benefit does it bring and what transformation does it bring, issues that society continues to grapple with, despite being presented with evidence, right, that women are strong leaders, that with your strong leadership, we see better policies in education, better policies in the health sector, etc. So it remains an area that needs to be defended, an area where negative stereotypes still need to be addressed, an area where patriarchal social norms really are something that we all need to have an honest conversation about, engage in, and look at innovative ways in which we can address some of these issues. And then, of course, there are other issues around resourcing that we all know of. I work from the Nairobi office, and in our region, many members of parliament talk about resourcing as a challenge, but what are some of the innovative ways in which women candidates, aspirants, those already in office can be supported? There are different ideas from different regions, from as varied as financing for women, political party support, getting independent resources, etc. And I think all the strategies differ depending on the country and what works for countries. And these are all really complex issues that we are grappling with, but I think they present as challenges to having more women in leadership and in politics, but not only that, to really keep women in the spaces. So these are some of the barriers I was talking about, right? Political parties, there are many rules surrounding that, patriarchy, religious influences. Some women can't join politics because of their church, harmful social norms. And I think one of the biggest issues that we see in the region and in different countries is the issue of violence against women in elections or in politics. It's a favorite topic of mine. It's a critical issue for all of us to engage with and grapple with, not only because it is becoming problematic in all the elections that we are seeing, but because it's an emerging issue where we need to have a deeper understanding of how does violence against women manifest. Gone are the days where we used to talk about physical violence only, but now there are many nuances that need to be considered. How violence online is manifesting, how AI is contributing to some of the nuances and the complexities and the challenges that we see in the space. How do we differentiate between covert violence and overt violence, and how do women report against that? Do our police have the understanding to support, to make the necessary arrests? Do the laws support reporting of such kinds of issues, etc.? So I think there are a wide range of issues that we can speak about here. This list is not in any way exhaustive, but just really highlighting. So what are some of the entry points that we see for women in political leadership that can be leveraged upon? I think in addition to all the good work that you are doing and some of the innovative ways in which we are seeing entry points for women's political leadership. So there are issues around community engagement, entry points for women's participation in politics from the local level of government, which we see as very, very important because it provides a key entry for women to enter into leadership and perhaps to end up in parliament, etc. So that cannot be underestimated. The political parties, of course, are obvious. And I think with this, we also want to speak about young women that are often not represented in the spaces and in youth, in caucuses. Some parliaments just have a main caucus, but having a youth caucus or women's wings or youth wings also give greater opportunities for others. Then, of course, the affirmative seats that have many challenges as well. So as young women, we've been working in this space for a while, and just to profile a few ideas here is the fact that the solutions for promoting women in public life are now well known. The challenge now is there political will to do the right thing? Is there political will to promote women's political participation, right? If we continue to say we need to end violence, what is stopping us from ending the violence? If we continue to speak about that there needs to be more resourcing for women and that doesn't happen, why is that not happening? Why is it that we don't have better support from private sector, from businesses, from individuals, etc.? Why is it that we don't have more male champions? What else do we need to do to promote the participation of women in public life? And in addition to that, what we also see as quite important and imperative is what we call leveling the playing field. And leveling the playing field is building the capacity of more women to lead. We know that women in leadership come from different spaces, from civil society, from private sector, etc. But, they don't always come with the skill set or with the knowledge of how to run a campaign, how to do the different things that they need to do in order to succeed in this space, because we don't want, often women are saying, oh, Maureen, you guys promote women to get into politics. But once we are there, sometimes we feel as if we are left alone and there is no support. So we want to level that playing field by providing capacities, whether it's training, whether it's skills, whether it's tools that support analysis of laws, engagement in parliament in the different forums and in different spaces. And then, of course, changing the narrative relates to what I said earlier. And this really is quite important. What does changing the narrative mean? It means that the more people hear about the fact that women can lead, something is going to change, something is going to switch in the mindsets of many people that, oh, okay, there is something there. And then the media has a role to play in portraying women in a different way in terms of their leadership. And then, of course, we all need to think about building allies and champions for our cause. So if we keep saying, let's promote women in public life, who else needs to come to the table? What can we do differently that we haven't been doing before, so that there is a shift, some sort of a transformation, and that we get greater gains going forward in terms of how we are engaging on some of these issues? And then, of course, I cannot overemphasize the issue around laws and policies, right? We are now in a period where we know that within your countries, whether it's Zimbabwe, whether it's South Africa, Malawi, laws and policies really do drive the work. It really does inform the engagements or the rules of engagement in politics, in elections, etc. And many of the governments that we come from have ratified international and regional instruments. What does that mean? What that means is that we want to have compliance, we want to have implementation, we want to have enforcement, because whether you look at it from the perspective of the Maputo Protocol, Agenda 2063, I'm speaking to you right now from the African Union, where we are deliberating on similar issues, reflecting on Beijing Plus 31. And this comes up as one of the key issues that we are discussing. How do we ensure implementation? How do we ensure enforcement of what is codified within regional and international instruments, bringing it so that it's tangible. Often people say to me, Maureen, there are laws, but it's the enforcement, it's the implementation. So the question is always who needs to do what, when, and how. And again, that political will around some of these things. Capacity building has happened many times. Mentoring has happened many times. Perhaps some of my reflections on these issues are on what kind of mentorship needs to happen, what kind of intergenerational dialogues need to happen around issues of participation in public life, and what kind of civic education and awareness can we continue to promote as we go about this way, because that's very, very, very key. And in terms of the normative frameworks, some of these but I think sometimes we need to engage with them so that we can push back. Right now, there's a pushback on gender equality, on the gender agenda. So we want to counter that. And how do we counter that? We counter that by knowing exactly what is codified, right, in our national laws, but not only in our national laws, but also in the international laws. For instance, there's pushback against quotas and temporary special measures. And I know many of you are familiar with this, where there is a pushback on why should we continue to have temporary special measures? Why do women want free seats? They need to compete with everybody else. They're bloating our parliaments, etc. But I think there is a good response that we get from the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which says that we have temporary special measures to address historical imbalances, to address many challenges that have hindered women's participation in the public space historically, and that you should, by all means, always promote, the implementation of affirmative action measures. And these should not be removed just because we are unhappy with them, or, one sector of society is unhappy with temporary special measures or quotas. But we should remove them only when we have achieved the reason why they were put in place in the first place. So if we haven't achieved 50-50, there is still justification to have quotas, to have temporary special measures. So what am I saying? Are there no problems with implementation of quotas? No. There are many problems. There are many challenges in many of our countries. But what we need to do is not to throw the baby with the bathwater. What we need to do is to say, if there are challenges with implementation of temporary special measures, quotas, in whatever form they come, maybe it's to look at what is hindering effective implementation of quotas. Do we need to have implementation modalities that work? So then we approach it from that perspective of looking at mechanisms that strengthen implementation, that strengthen transparency, and so that we move forward on that. I won't look at the rest of them, but maybe CSW 65 is the one I want to highlight to you. You probably already know this, but CSW 65 was a game changer. Why was it a game changer? It was a game changer because in 1990, we were talking about a 30% target of women in leadership and politics in our parliaments, right? Through the ECOSOC resolution of 1990, where we wanted to increase the proportion of women in leadership to at least 30% by 1995, and that's the year of Beijing. That didn't happen. Then, we started also talking about gender balance, the language of gender balance, looking at 30%, 40%. And then, of course, CSW 65 came in 2021. And I'm highlighting this because these are normative progressions that we need to be aware of, that we need to utilize in advocacy and in speaking and in looking at policies within our parliaments, etc. So 65 said that we need to look at a goal of 50-50 gender balance, not 20, not 30, not 40, but 50-50. So this is the language that we have now. And I'm quite excited to let you know that last 2 weeks ago, we had what is called the CEDAW General Recommendation number 40. That was launched. There was an Africa consultation on it. It's a very important normative framework that was looking at women's participation in leadership in the, globally, but also because it's been, spearheaded by by the CEDAW committee. It's something that we're going to need to look at. I find that it's a visionary, parity roadmap for achieving gender equality and inclusion. When you find time, it's really good to look at it. Some of the key issues that is looking at around youth engagement, intersectional inclusion, the use of technology, social media, etc. These are really quite important for your advocacy going forward as member states develop, priorities and recommendations on some of these issues. That is quite key. So I think perhaps with those few thoughts, rather, I can't say that, it's anything new that you haven't heard of, but this was just really a little bit of reflection on my part on some of these issues. And I really just want to emphasize and appreciate the fact that you're sitting together in a room for cross-learning, cross-sharing, and that we cannot overemphasize the importance of that, of women coming together to learn from each other. And I think for me, my message for you around, I think a key issue you need to tackle is this issue of violence against women in elections and politics. What needs to happen? Really pushing for zero tolerance around issues of sexual harassment within parliaments and many of these challenges that are being faced. There are many examples of what can be done. The Me Too movement gave us pointers, right, of what can happen when women mobilize around an issue, mobilize around tackling issues around abuse and harassment in politics. And we know that this is a reality that is faced by many women in politics. Not always easy to address, but I think we can learn even from other regions, right? There are other regions in Latin America, for instance, where parliaments show commitment to combating violence by adopting sexual harassment policies. They adopt complaint procedures for their members. They emphasize political will to address these issues when they are being reported, right? So I think these are, instructive things we can think about. Many of our countries don't have laws on this. Tanzania is one of the first countries in our region right now that has started to think about or has something similar to a law addressing violence against women in elections or politics. Bolivia, for the longest time, was the only country that had a law specifically tackling violence against women in politics. And your crime would be exacerbated by the fact that maybe the woman harassed was older, had a disability, and it looked at all these kinds of intersectionalities. But let me end here and just say thank you so much. These are just a few thoughts on women's political participation in a marathon way in the region. I thank you for your attention, and Nyasha, I hope I didn't take too much time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maureen. I think you managed to touch on some of the points that I think our honorable members had mentioned, especially when I was listening to the barriers to women's political participation, issues to do with structural barriers, patriarchy, social, cultural, and religious influences, harmful norms and violence, lack of political will. I think our speaker and the chairperson from Women's Caucus, they touched on those areas and highlighted how these have been barriers for women's political participation. We actually had as chairperson who highlighted that at one point when she was running to where she was accused of dating a Ben 10, but she used that as she turned lemon into lemonade, and she used that as a tool to campaign, and now she's in parliament for the second time. So some of the issues that you touched on, we did get personal experiences in how they've been affecting our members of parliament. So colleagues, that is the presentation from the UN Women, and Maureen, she's still with us. I don't know if there's anyone who would want to engage with Maureen, either a question or a contribution to what she has highlighted. Maureen, the Speaker of the KZN Parliament, would want to add a point.
Thank you, Nyasha, and greetings, Maureen, my sister. I heard you speaking about the issue of resources for members, and I understand that in South Africa we might have a different context in that we started from these elections, we now have independents and also the majority that are standing coming from political parties. I understood a few weeks back when I met with the rest of the parliamentarians in the region that there is some assistance that is given by UN Women. Especially, I knew that in countries like Tanzania and Nigeria, they were very explicit on the extent that is given directly to support the work of the parliamentarian as they go to election. Now, in a context like ours in South Africa, and where you find that women do not necessarily contest constituencies, but their relevance in leadership would be through the support and work they do in the constituencies they get allocated to by their political parties. Is the UN Women able to assist those women parliamentarians in the same manner that I heard that they assist those that are still contesting? Because I am raising this question because the issue of being elected might be difficult, but the other difficult aspect is retaining the seat of a woman. And you retain the seat through relevance in terms of programs that you bring to the people that have elected you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone want to contribute? I think the question that the speaker also asked is very relevant. When we went to Malawi, the chairperson of the Women Caucus said when she was running for office, she had to buy a mobile ambulance, which stayed at her house. So when it was time to campaign, she actually looked for a driver so that in the community that they're living, if there's anyone who wants to go to the hospital, they would call the office of the member of parliament and say, we would want an ambulance, and they would go. So it was fortunate because she had the means to do that. But with what the speaker has asked, it's a relevant point to say for those who do not have resources, what do they do in such a case? Is the UN Women able to support members of parliament who might want resources so as to make an impact in their communities? Any questions or any contributions before we give it to Maureen? No questions. Maureen, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. And ma'am, thank you for that question and seeking clarity. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to indicate that the issue of elections touches on significant issues around national sovereignty, etc. And there are a number of key rules that govern electoral support by the UN to the different countries and the nature of the engagement in terms of that kind of electoral support. As UN Women, we do not under any circumstances give or disperse resources to candidates or aspirants in their campaigns in terms of their political aspirations. Why? Because as a UN agency, we need to maintain our independence. Of course, there is specific support that we give as UN Women to support the candidates, and most of that comes in the format of capacity building support, assisting in coordination and development of tools, advocacy, campaigns around speaking on issues of inclusive electoral participation, the need for positive legal and policy frameworks that enable the participation of women in politics. So in terms of actually really giving resources to women directly, this is not actually something that we do, but we support in various ways, supporting candidates and aspirants to deal with issues around social media, working with other UN agencies such as UNDP and support in messaging, working with tech institutions, etc. So I thought maybe I could just clarify that. So obviously the support that we have, if it's required to say, for instance, that the issues of violence are prevalent in a specific country, and that UN Women is required to come and sort of assist to look at what are some of the strategies and options that a country can look at, what are some of the best lessons and strategies from the region or globally that can be adopted, by a caucus or by members of parliament to deal with some of these issues. We can proffer that kind of advisory service and give some support and some ideas on how some of those issues can be looked into. So, and I think this is really an important issue for us to look at, and even the support that comes to member states around electoral support from the UN is very carefully regulated. So you find that the UN's engagement in issues around politics and support around elections is regulated by the electoral assistance support that I was talking about. That's guided by the some of the SG's messaging and the requests that come from member states for any kind of support. For instance, a member state needs to request for UN electoral assistance and support. A needs assessment mission is normally sent by the UN Department of Political Affairs that assesses the needs of a country, and then subsequently the UN family then provides detailed support to that member state or to the country, which includes support sometimes to parliament, to civil society, to the election management body, but in no way then individual candidates given the resources. And I know that this is disappointing, but it's an important safeguard so that the UN is not caught up in some of the issues that can come through from that kind of engagements of financing political parties or candidates, which may not always be straightforward. So that's the kind of support that that we give. Are there other opportunities with civil society and other platforms? I'm sure there are, but I think from our perspective, if there is any kind of support that's required on capacity building, on tools, on technical support, etc., we stand ready to support. And I know there's a lot of frustration on finances to say sometimes we don't want, I was once told, oh no, sometimes, towards an election, Maureen, we don't want more trainings, we don't want more tools. We actually want practical help of finances, and I hear that and I understand that, but unfortunately, these are some of the limitations that exist, and we do our best to support and remain your greatest supporters in this space, because as you rightfully say, we don't want stagnation, we don't want regression, and we don't want to just stay, at the same levels, but we want to continue to go up and to build up. And resourcing is a critical component of that. And if we had time, we'll get into an extensive discussion of what are some of those resourcing ideas. But I think that will take us quite a bit of time. But yes, thank you, and I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maureen. We just pray that things can flow easily and we can be able to access funds for our women parliamentarians. Thank you so much, and we can allow you to go into your next meeting. Colleagues, that was Maureen from the UN Women, who was giving a presentation on women's political participation. So now we want to go into, because of our time, we've managed to scratch, I think, 2 sessions. I think time permitting, we might be able to look into these sessions in our next round of, into our next round of interface. But now we are moving on to the next session, which is going to be facilitated by Mary Izobo. She is the program manager for the Center for Violence and Reconciliation in Johannesburg. She's fresh coming from Liberia, where she was engaging with the former president of Liberia, who is a woman. So we are expecting to get some few nuggets from her in terms of what it means to empower women and girls. She also runs her own initiative here in South Africa, which also seeks to empower young women. She's going to talk more about it. And then, yeah, over to you, Mary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always not very great when you have a presentation after lunch because people are tired and sometimes people are very full. But anyway, like my colleague Nyasha said, my name is Mary Zobo, and I am the program manager at CSVR. But at the same time, like I always say, I have two jobs. And as women, I guess this is one of the downside. So I have the day job and the night job. So the day job is me being a program manager at CSVR. And my night job is being the founder and executive director of the Amazon Leadership Initiative. So I'm going to start my presentation. Unfortunately, I thought it was going to be showing on the screen. Yes, I did. Look. Stamp. Here. Oh, no, it didn't go through. Stamp is on.
Sorry, I think we got the wrong email address.
Yes.
You can speak through.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I want to talk about the role of parliamentarians. For me, I like being in spaces like this because it inspires me to continue to grow and develop myself so that one day I can also be in spaces where I can actually continue to ameliorate the life of women and girls. So the name of the organization that I actually found is called the Amazon Leadership Initiative, DILE for short. And what it does is it empowers women and girls between 14 to 29 years of age. Even though we are based in South Africa, we actually run in 48 countries across Africa. So we have 4,000 young women and girls, 2 of which are present here today from Durban. That's how much of the network we have. So I'll quickly talk about the programs that we run. The first one is the Back to School program, which I was very interested in when one of the parliamentarians from Zimbabwe actually spoke about it in terms of how they actually use these programs to empower women and girls. So one of it is the Back to School program, which we currently run. We have been able to present shoes, backpacks, school supplies to over 280 girls across 5 countries in Africa. We also do the measure health and measure health hygiene, which we also did a program in Zambia last year in doing the S4D2 program, and we also did some here in South Africa. Another thing that we've also done, I would say, is the annual leadership forum for young female leaders. And what that program does is that it brings young women and girls together. It's our flagship program. So I'll give you an example. Last year, we actually opened the application for 2 weeks, and we had over 15,000 applications. And what this means is that oftentimes programs like leadership programs would always ask young girls to pay between $50, $100, or how much thousands of rands or hundreds of rands. But our program, we do not collect fees. Why? Because we ensure that we're able to target the marginalized and the underserved girls in the community. Because once we add a price tag to it, what it then means is that, do you have the, or you're going to be the one, do you have the remote? Okay. So what it means is that once you add a price tag to it, it becomes elitist. So only young women and girls whose parents can afford to actually pay for them for this program would actually be able to attend, excluding once again marginalized. So I always say that, you know, it's difficult being a woman, but it's more difficult being a Black woman. Okay, so I'm going to now go to my presentation. I hope it's not a lot, and I hope I do not bore you. But again, it's empowering dreams, the next generation of female leaders, and the role of legislators in supporting initiatives like the Amazon Leadership Initiative. Next, please. No, it's okay. Okay, yes. So legislators, as all of you are present here today, you have a huge role, and some of which you've mentioned during the early session of the day, of how you've been able to support different initiatives and how you've been able to support programs that has to do with women and girls. And again, you all play a role in supporting leadership programs, such as the Amazon Leadership Initiative, which I do run. Okay, so I already spoke about the organization that I founded and what it does. And some of our programs, like the back to school programs, mentorship programs, women, peace and security programs. We also commemorate the International Day of the Girl Child, which we did October 11, for example, this year. And what we actually called the title of the program is Empowering Dreams, Raising the Next Generation of South Africa's female leaders. And then we also commemorate the 16 days of activism that usually starts from the 25th of November up until 16th of December. So I'm going to talk about the Annual Leadership Forum, which I'm hoping could interest the Zimbabwean parliamentarians here. And I'm hoping that we can actually take it to Zimbabwe next year. I did speak about it to 1 or 2 parliamentarians here, and I'm hoping that it becomes a reality. So the flagship program for DIALI is the Annual Leadership Forum for Young Female Leaders. In 2021, we had the very first program, which was virtual because of COVID. A program, when I started the organization in 2020, I asked myself, who's going to come for the program? I don't think anybody knows me enough to even want to attend. So I was really scared. But how they say, take the first step. And so I put out the application, hoping to even get 30 people. I'm like, if I get 30 people, I think it's a success. And when I launched it, 700 girls applied. And that was when it became a shocker to me that, okay, I think this program is something that a lot of young people need. And I wanted to host 100 girls, but because it was 700 people that applied, I ended up accepting 300 girls and got support from the South African government. In 2022, again, I was like, okay, we've hosted 300 girls. We're hoping to at least host maybe 400 to be fair. So in 2022, it was again virtual because of COVID and also because we didn't have funding at that time. And it was largely self-funded. And so I put up the application, got about 3,000 applications. And I was like, okay, there's something that, is being done right here. And we're able to host now, out of this 3,000, we're able to host 1,000 girls online. And then in 2023 was our third forum. It was actually hosted in Pretoria, but this time it was a hybrid event. We had 130 girls in person. And out of the 130 girls in person, 35 were from across Africa, from Algeria, Libya, South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia. 35 countries were represented out of the 130 girls. And it was actually funded largely by GIZ. And this year, we are going to Nairobi, Kenya. So this year, we are being hosted at the University of Nairobi, Kenya. We had opened the application for 1 week because of what happened last year, where we opened the application for 2 weeks and 15,000 girls had applied. And we had to select 130 girls in person and about 1,500 girls online. This year, we opened for 1 week. We had 10,000 applications, and we decided to host 500 girls in person at the University of Nairobi, and we're going to be hosting 2,500 girls online. So this year, it's going to be a total of 3,000 girls. It's going to be hosted at the University of Nairobi at the Taifa Hall, which was being given to us by the University of Nairobi. So we're actually doing this in partnership with the University of Nairobi. For partnership, we thrive off of partnership, like most organizations, like most human beings, where they say that nobody's an island. And so we've partnered with the Gwasha Marshall Trust. We've partnered with GIZ, the Institute for Development Studies, University of Nairobi, Sky Pictures in the US, Nelson Mandela Foundation, United States Embassy. I think this year I've really been supported by the United States Embassy because last year I got 2 fellowships. One was the Desmond Tutu. I was awarded the Desmond Tutu Fellowship for 2023, and also got the International Visitors Leadership Program fellowship by the United States of America. So I was actually given a grant by them. And so the US Embassy in South Africa actually supports DIALI, and also the United States Embassy at the African Union, because they didn't know where to place me, mostly because I am a Nigerian living in South Africa. And so they just decided that they were going to place me with the office at the African Union. And we're also supported by the Umhlanga Foundation, Zimbabwe. I don't know if you know about the Umhlanga Foundation, Zimbabwe. No? Okay. The Umhlanga Foundation. Umhlanga, yes, okay. Yes. So we also partnered with them last year to actually commemorate International Day of the Girl Child. So I already talked about my organization because I'm actually using my organization as a case study on how parliamentarians or legislators can actually work with organizations, little tiny weeny organizations like mine, to make sure that we're able to actually promote support networks, career guidance, and foster inclusivity in leadership roles for young female leaders. As young people sitting in the room, I would say that it's safe to say mentorship is very important, right? Where we get to sit in the same room as female parliamentarians and legislators and get to learn, and also get to aspire to say one day, if a woman can sit at that table, I also can. If she can do it, I also can. If she can shatter glass ceilings to get to where she is, why not, right? Because I know the road has been bumpy, or the road is bumpy for a lot of female parliamentarians and legislators, especially in a male-dominated space and world, but they still end up getting to where they want to get to. So again, I was saying that legislators can actually help replicate this success by promoting similar initiatives, but actually sitting in the room and listening to parliamentarians speak actually is a reminder that, you know, initiatives like this are already being supported, but maybe more can be done, because there's always more that can be done. And so one would be allocate funding for empowerment programs. So this is a call to action for all the female parliamentarians here to please support leadership initiatives, various ones, by providing funding. I know it's not easy. I know the funding space is shrinking, but however, and that's why I say maybe we're coming to Zimbabwe or Malawi next year, where support might not necessarily be financial, but it could also be in terms of human resources. It could be in terms of mentorship. It could be in terms of providing space or providing just that natural support for organizations like ours and for young female leaders. Another also is when you sit down and talk about the budgeting, if you can please allocate budgets for organizations and initiatives. Another one is to enact supportive legislation and policies. I know we spoke about it today when we were giving insights, and most of the insights that were actually discussed were that how do we actually ensure that policies that promote women and girls are being supported. And also another policy would be to actually enact policies that encourage gender-based approaches in both public and private sectors. Encourage partnership and collaboration. I know I've said it like 3 times, and this is me maybe lobbying low-key for DIALI's leadership forum to come to Zimbabwe next year. Is this something that is doable? Okay. So yes, so this is another call to action for partnership in terms of advocacy for partnerships between government agencies, countries, NGOs, but also collaboration, just like what already is being done here with the Empower Her seminar, where the different caucuses from Zimbabwe, Malawi, and South Africa actually coming together to work together, where they can learn from each other, and also they can work together to create initiatives that will continue to enhance women and girls. Another is to promote access to leadership education. When the first parliamentarian came to speak, I'm forgetting her name now, and you know they had read her bio about so many degrees. And it's amazing to have women like this in spaces like this, because they then know the value of education. Because oftentimes, you know, I remember, well, it's not like I've not grown up, I'm still growing up, but I remember my uncle saying that I was going to end up in a man's kitchen, regardless of my education. And it made me feel really bad. It made me really feel bad. At the point I was like, what's the point of studying or of doing all of this education if at the end I'm going to end up in a man's kitchen, right? But I guess that just sitting in rooms like this and spaces like this and seeing that women actually, regardless, have gone through this educational, various education background, and they do not end up in a man's kitchen, but have ended up sitting in boards, sitting at the helms of governments is very refreshing, right? So I think for me, it's a clarion call to say that my dreams are valid. Another is to champion mentorship and role model programs. That's also something that we do at DIALI. And so this is a call to action for the female parliamentarians here to please mentor girls. DIALI is open to actually accept mentors from you, because one of the programs we're actually working on is women in political participation, where we can actually have women that would mentor young girls, young women and girls into political spaces, because oftentimes a girl who does not even have her 3 square meals or live in the deepest rural area would think that she can never achieve anything, because she's like, I don't even know where my next meal is from. So who says that I can become the next parliamentarian, or I can become the next senator, or I can actually become the next minister? I met with Minister Muswangana. I can't remember her name. Nyasha, what's her name again? Yes, Monica Umhlanga. Yes. So I met with her in Liberia, and just hearing her speak and hearing her story, because she had actually shared it during the African Women Leadership Network that we held in Liberia. I actually just got back this morning. And to hear her actually speak up and say her story was very humbling, of how she started and how, she is where she is right now. And one thing I did know, funny enough, I didn't even know that I was going to also meet more female parliamentarians here, was to hear her actually talk about her support for DIALI. Another thing is creating opportunities for dialogue and exposure, sponsoring platforms for young leaders, and also exposing young leaders to actually policy discussions and leadership events, as well as conferences such as this, where 2 young female leaders are amongst us right now. We have an 18-year-old in our midst who's here sitting and actually learning from all of you in terms of how far you've come and the processes that you've taken and the problems, the challenges, as well as the best practices and the experiences. So here is where I'm going to take a sit for a bit to hear 2 impact stories. One is from Esitle Butelezi, who's an 18-year-old grade 11 student. And another is from Skunziwe Zanibe, who is actually a banker, and she works at the Absa Bank. So over to you, Esitle.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well today. Thank you. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with taking a single step." And I'd like to take 2. To commend and thank every woman in here who's actively taking those steps for themselves and for future generations like myself. I began my journey with the DIALI 4 years ago, and since then, I have grown in ways I never anticipated. When I think about where I came from, a withdrawn, hesitant person, and where I am now, more confident in who I am and what I have to offer, I can truly say this was the right path for me. Since joining the Amazon Leadership Initiative in grade 8, being a part of the first inaugural leadership forum, where I first recited my poem, Black Girl Magic, I have only grown and sharpened my skills. Being mentored by Mary and the DIALI associates, spending long nights rehearsing after rehearsal to just get it perfect. And we could not leave. I'm telling you guys, we could not leave until it was perfect. Mary can tell you. Since then, I have taken part in many other events, including being a facilitator in 2023's Leadership Forum and even hosting She Speaks Africa, the adolescent girls movement, nothing about us without us. With the Gwasha Michelle Trust, it is truly an achievement to gain Mary's trust and know that she saw something in me at just 16 years old, capable of hosting an event. Not once did I think that I would have the opportunity to be on a platform working with Gwasha Michelle Trust and even having Ma Gwasha listen to my little voice. I can now say that my voice was not and is not so little. And to confirm to myself that yes, I might be young and have a big dream, but my dream is valid. Only halfway through my testimonial, you can only imagine how far I've grown and gained from being a part of the Amazon Leadership Initiative. I've worked with the Womandla Foundation, which we collaborated with, and I was given the opportunity to be an expert panelist as an adolescent leader on the topic, Reflections of Eliminating Harmful Practices Affecting Children, for their monthly #Vagina Monologue. Learning that female genital mutilation is a serious issue, that girls in Africa are still not being afforded the right to go to school, and experiencing their period at home and not being able to go to school because of it made me mad. And I had to do something about it. The Amazon Leadership Initiative continues to open my eyes to the injustices that persist in our world and the importance of taking an active role in fighting for equality and inclusion. And in my participation in the Vagina Monologue, my conviction to fight for women's rights and for their voice to be heard only deepened. Through the opportunities and experience I've gained from the alley, I've developed invaluable skills like leadership, independence, and confidence. And I've learned to think beyond my own experiences. Attending the first in-person and Zoom leadership forum last year, I learned a lot about being independent. I flew for the first time at 17 years old from Durban to Gauteng. I stayed in a hotel with many other young female leaders who were eager, like myself, to soak in all the inspiration from the women across Africa who came to inspire us. The independence and responsibility did not stop at traveling to Gauteng to the forum. It has carried out into my school life. I've gained hands-on experience on organizing, speaking up, teamwork, and leading group projects. This has sparked my interest to pursue a career where I can continue to create change, whether through leadership, advocacy, or supporting young voices like my own. Through my involvement with the alley, I found a sense of purpose and a place where I belong, finally. Being a part of an organization dedicated to empowering young women has reinforced my belief that I too can have something important to contribute to. Knowing I have a community that supports me and my goals and gives me confidence as I work toward becoming a leader who can make a real impact. This is only a fragment of what Mary has achieved in creating the Amazon Leadership Initiative. And I hope that next year I can make her proud, just like the many other young female leaders who matriculated last year and the year before that, and who will matriculate this year. She mentored all those women, and she will continue to mentor many more like myself and bring them to great heights. This purpose motivates me every day to do all I can do to bring awareness to such issues and be the best I can be, empowering many young female leaders out there, making my voice heard, because Black girl, your dreams are valid. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Skonziwe, over to you.
Greetings, everybody. I hope everyone is good. It is such an honor to be among such great women. It is such an honor to be in the midst of such great leaders. You know, we were just talking with my leader outside that as we grew up, like it was not a thing to see women standing up for themselves, pushing for their goals. We were always taught that women are followers. You always need to like follow men leading you, you know. So it is so exciting to actually see the current generation that women are actually standing up for themselves. And Dr. Miles Monroe said, the richest place is a grave because there lies purposes that were not unleashed, you know. So people died with their dreams not accomplished. So one of the greatest things in life is living your life and pursuing your purpose. So I'm just going to share my journey as well as I joined the Ali. So my journey is quite short. I joined last year in 2023, and how I joined is I joined a virtual forum that was actually happening in Pretoria. So I'm a person who's very ambitious, right? So I like being in spaces where people are growing and they're pursuing their goals. However, because of the education that we are, like it's not a common thing to find such spaces. So my friend introduces me to this to this organization, and I go there. What I have actually learned is that, as my leader has explained, the main thing is to challenge the stereotypes of gender inequality that is currently existing in our society. And also, through the Ali, I've actually gained to be self-confident and to be aware of myself, because that's the only way I can be able to reach my full potential and pursue my personal goals. So linking my passions and my skills and my talents to actually be my best selves and impact my surroundings and the communities that are actually around me as a young and a female leader that is actually growing. So the networking opportunities that we have gained through the Ali, there's a lot of, as she explained, there's a lot of forums that are actually hosted. There are Zoom sessions on mental health, on community projects. So that is where we are taught, even on career mentorship and all those things. So we are able to actually learn and empower each other and make meaningful networking with all the other female leaders. So as I continue with my journey, I commit to amplifying everything that I've learned, mentoring and inspiring other female leaders, and I look into taking even more leadership roles and being more involved in the organization as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to call on Honorable Fikile Masiko, who's the chair of Quality of Life Committee, KZN, to actually give her statement regarding this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you to the beautiful young women who have given their testimonies before us. And I must say, Mary, that I'm also tempted to give my own very testimony, because, you know, the universe does align. And I really believe that it will one day align for these two young women. They have been women in my life that have mentored me. And today I can speak proudly and say that I am a product of the women who have taken a step in providing mentorship to young women such as myself. Just a brief testimony, if I may, Honorable Speaker. There's a program that the KZN Legislature has been running for years, which is the Women's Parliament. And I had the opportunity through the organization that I am in to participate in the Women's Parliament at a very young age. And this Women's Parliament is conducted under the portfolio that today I'm currently a chairperson of. So those such programs do really come to life. And for me, it is the universe truly aligning in favor of the investments that we are making in ensuring that young women or the girl child are not left behind. So indeed, young women, your dreams are indeed valid. I would like to say that. So I'll just briefly, I'm not going to take much time because we've presented before on our challenges, but we would like to present to this platform some of the investments that the KZN legislature is making towards ensuring that the girl children in this province are indeed not left behind. One such I've noted, which is the Women's Parliament that the KZN legislature holds every year during the Women's Month. And this is a platform that is provided for women across the province of KwaZulu-Natal to converge and raise issues which affect them. But they also, over and above that, take resolutions which are then circulated to the different government departments in the province, and they have a responsibility to implement and respond to those resolutions. Our role as the legislature is to then play oversight on the implementations of those resolutions through the legislature, but specifically through the Standing Committee on the Quality of Life. Secondly, there are a number of economic empowerment programs for women and girls. And the Women's Caucus has convened several seminars for economic empowerment for women and girls. And the focus specifically of those seminars was on opportunities in the transport and the agricultural sector, as we know that it's one of the most important sectors that women need to take advantage of. The Department of Transport and Agriculture and Rural Development have presented in such seminars on how these departments can support women farmers, as well as women in logistics and women entrepreneurs. The overall objective was to expose women to programs specifically targeting women, as well as funding opportunities and information on how to access them. The department, as well as funding entities, have made valuable presentations in such seminars. We have the Department of Transport, the KZN Department of Agriculture, as well as its agency, which is the Agricultural Development Agency, ADA. We have Small Enterprise Development, SIDA, Small Enterprise Financing Agency, which is SIFA, the National Youth Development Agency, specifically for young women who have brilliant ideas that need some form of funding or grant funding to assist them. We also have in this province the Richards Bay Development Zone, as well as the Industrial Development Corporations, which have been able to present some of the programs that they have to provide not only mentorship, but also assistance to women who have brilliant ideas. About 200 women and girls have benefited from the program, and the stakeholders that were invited included young unemployed women graduates, female students at tertiary institutions studying transport and maritime studies at the University of Durban, University of Technology in Durban, the Mangosuthu University of Technology, as well as AMA students from TVET colleges across the province. Women aspiring to enter the world of business, and women-owned cooperatives and women-owned SMMEs. We've also been able to have a high panel discussion on the collaboration with the Commonwealth Women's Parliamentarians, and to mark the 2021 International Women's Day, the Women's Caucus in the Legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, working together with the CWP Pro chapter of the KZN legislature, convened a panel discussion that focused on the acceleration of women's representation in leadership positions. The panel was also able to have a discussion on various issues that took place in the Pietermaritzburg City Hall. The event was attended by women from different sectors and participants, which included civil society organizations, as well as AMA NGOs, non-government organizations, women in the municipal and traditional leadership, women professionals, women in business, women in academia, which is quite important. The primary focus of these discussions was to champion the advancement of women's rights as well as gender equality. The most important, which is lobbying. As women, sometimes we fall short of lobbying. We always say, especially in the political spaces, that while we sleep at night, you will find men conversing over, you know, a cup of coffee or even their drinks with percentage. They are lobbying each other, they are networking, they are negotiating, they are cutting deals. Tina, we are at home cooking for our kids, we are tired coming from work, we are sleeping, waiting for our husbands, some of those who are married to come back home. But Bona, they are seated somewhere lobbying for whatever deals that they are looking for. So it's one of the most important sectors that we should also, or issues that we should also focus on as women. We've got also programs that look or focus on empowering young girls to join the STEM fields. And to celebrate the 2022 International Women's Day, the Women's Caucus in the KZN Legislature embarked on a collaborative program with the Center for the Advancement of Science and Mathematics and the University of KwaZulu-Natal to empower grade 9 girl learners from 8 schools in the eThekwini municipality. The seminar focused on the STEM education as well as the career opportunities for girls in high schools. The objective was to inspire the girls to conquer obstacles and thrive in the traditionally male-dominated sectors. We also deal with issues of empowering women in political structures, and to date, the CWP chapter of the Women's Caucus convened a dialogue on gender responsive budgeting in the Ilembe district in a Mandeni local municipality, and invited women councillors from all the 4 local municipality of that district. We also have done engagements with institutions of higher learning, where the Women's Caucus has been able to convene an engagement with tertiary institutions in the province in response to the escalating gender-based violence and femicide that we're experiencing. The program was aimed at ensuring that the tertiary institutions have a role to play in mitigating as well as eradicating the scourge of gender-based violence. There's been a young women's symposium, which has been conceptualized a few years ago by the office of our speaker, and it is being implemented as a platform where young women converge to be empowered about available opportunities that can change their lives for the better. We've held various dialogues through the Standing Committee on the Quality of Life in Umhlanga, where we were focusing on the issue of human rights and giving women information about available economic opportunities, stakeholder engagements in areas like Tembe, which are the far-flung areas, where the Standing Committee has visited a number of women with an aim of creating a platform for women on farms to engage on issues of gender-based violence. And lastly, in conclusion, Mary and our girl children, we as the KZN Legislature believe that the most important of our role as parliamentarian is to play our oversight responsibility. And we should continue to ensure that resolutions that are taken in all these empowerment platforms that we have created are implemented by the responsible departments. The KZN Legislature has been able to exercise oversight to ensure as well that the gender-sensitive programs are included in the APPs of the various government departments. If we lose it at that stage where the annual performance plans are being presented before the committees, I don't think that we'll be able to then get it at the end, where we are expecting departments to report on their contributions to the development of women in the province. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you so much, Honorable. I would like you to actually take your seat there, just in case there are questions for you, even from our young women and girls. And then the next person I'd like to call to also share her story with us is Honorable Otilia Sibanda, who's the Vice Chairperson, Zimbabwe Women's Caucus.
Good afternoon, everyone. Fellow parliamentarians from KZN, Parliament led by Speaker Honorable N.N. Boyce. Let me also recognize my chairperson, Maybe Mboa. Ladies and gentlemen, lonke lizizwe lihloniphekile, lizimbokodo. Today I stand before to discuss vital issue that transcends borders and cultures. The empowerment of women and girls in Zimbabwe, as many parts of the world. The path to equality and leadership for women and girls is still fraught with challenges. However, I believe as women caucuses, we have the power to change this narrative